Aloha and welcome to Hawaii ACTE Navigating the New Normal video workshop series. I'm your host, Alyssa Alcos, and in the next few months, we'll be sharing some helpful tips, tricks, and resources to help navigate your new normal. So sit back, relax, because their very first video series kicks off with my good friend of mine, Kaylee Conception, all the way from Waianae High School. She's going to share with us how to convert an interactive notebook to an online virtual notebook. If you're interested, sit back, relax, because this starts in three, two, one.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylee Concepcion. I am currently a 10th grade biology teacher at Waianae High School. One of my really good friends, Alyssa Alco, she's a CTE teacher at Waianae High School too. She asked if my friend Emma and I could run a little PD session on how we use virtual notebooks in our classes. So um, I've run a PD on virtual notebooks before, and I'm hoping that this can be useful for allowing teachers to navigate distance learning. I personally think like interactive notebooks and virtual notebooks are a great way for students to have all their work in one place. Um, let's get right into it. I'm going to share some of our hopes for this sessions or these sessions. Um, Ultimately, we want teachers to gain another resource to utilize during virtual learning. I know virtual learning is definitely played a toll on like our instruction, as well as like our well-being, having to like create so much more content than we're used to, and just all the adjustments and changes our students are having to go through too. So I'm hoping that this will be a good resource for you all. Also, hoping that we feel comfortable and confident to create a virtual notebook and to implement one. And then ultimately, just hope that we can leave you with something tangible. I'm going to try to share all my resources that I have with Alyssa, and hopefully, she can somehow share it with you all too if you're watching this. So, here's a little timeline. So we're going to do this in 3 sessions. This first session that I am doing, we'll do like a little introduction to virtual notebooks and ultimately how to set them up. My good friend Emma Davis will be going over some tips and tricks and manipulatives and activities. And then I'll be kind of going through, or we'll both go through, how to roll out a virtual notebook and how to troubleshoot any obstacles. Because there are some challenges with virtual notebooks if you've never done one before, especially, or if you've never done an interactive notebook in general. There can be some obstacles or some scary new things that we haven't really tried before that we're going to have to roll with. So some of the objectives of this, I personally like to try to look at things anytime I roll something out to the classroom. I try to think of like, what is a student going to gain out of this? Because sometimes things might be easier for me, or things might be more like exciting for me, but it's not that exciting for kids. So some of the student benefits of this is that it really builds organizational habits, especially if you are really diligent about building organizational habits and using this as a tool for kids to be organized and to understand that the more organized you are, like the more likely you are to do well. It also centralizes work, so it's less confusion, and then it increases engagement, activity, and interactivity. So you can also do a lot of really cool interactive things in virtual notebooks that Emma or I will go over in the next couple sessions. So that's really cool. And then for myself too, what I've found is that it's really easy to give consistent and streamlined feedback. So it's really helpful for teachers anyway, for us to give some feedback, like some immediate feedback too, in virtual notebooks. Again, for teachers and students, it centralizes work to decrease confusion. So everything is in one place. So really, it's kind of like, okay, look in your virtual notebook because that's where everything is. And then lastly, it's the ease of formatting. So once you get one done, rolling out the next one is really easy if you decide to do more than one in a semester or a quarter or whatever your class looks like. Okay, some challenges that I have come across that I am working to um, like Okay, so some challenges that I've experienced while implementing a virtual notebook that I'm working to overcome are front loaded planning. So, a lot of people think that with virtual notebooks, it's a ton of front loaded planning. So, that means that like you have to plan everything before you roll it out. There's ways to get around that. And you can start super basic with your virtual notebooks and then have students or you can add in activities as you go. We'll probably show you how to do that in the next couple sessions. You might have to teach some students some skills, especially if they're not super tech savvy. But the good thing is that it carries over to like other Google apps. So I've noticed with my high schoolers is that a lot of them know how to use slides already. A lot of them have made slides presentations before. So it's not too bad to teach them like a few tips and tricks and how to navigate Google Apps, but for the most part, you might have to teach your kids some tech skills. And then that's really it that I could think of, but I'm sure other people feel a little differently about the challenges, but ultimately, those are the challenges I've experienced. Okay, so what I kind of wanted to do is show you guys a few samples. So let me go ahead and pull those up. Okay, so this is the current virtual notebook that I have my students work on. This is just my title page. But the big bulk that I have students use is the notes. And then there's some activities that I throw in here too that I slide in for students to work on. I'll show you a student sample, but ultimately like they use like the tables to like fill out their notes. I do Cornell note style. We can talk about that in a little bit. Oh, look, some wrote kind of confusing. That's feedback. Um, but yeah, I do a lot of different activities in the virtual notebook. It's really great because students know where to go. They don't have to access 5 different tabs to do things. So that's really awesome. But some of the things that I do is like click and drag, like students will click and drag certain, like these are molecules. So students will click and drag certain things. In this little feedback loop I have, they click and drag this too. I really like click and drags, if you guys didn't notice. It's really great for diagramming as well. I sometimes just have a little worksheet like thing in here, or I do like a concept map. So really the possibilities are truly endless with virtual notebooks. And that is a good segue into my next slide. So when my friend Emma and I were digging into how we wanted to roll this out for teachers, we decided to use the 5E model. Here's 4 of the E's. So the first one that's really easy to implement in digital notebooks is explain. A lot of students can do these things asynchronously, that's why. So note taking, readings, marking the text, summarizing, diagramming, drafting, and outlining, right? So if you're an English teacher, this is a really good place where students can just do like reading the text, marking it up, and using all the different tools that Google Slides has. That's great for students to do that. For engage and explore, even more possibilities. Draggables, manipulatives, slidables, put in order, building blocks, KWLs, there's flowcharts, concept mapping. If you're not a science or English teacher, you could even do, or if you're a math teacher, you could do coordinate planes. You can do graphing on top of these virtual notebooks. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use this. Emma and I will talk more about this in the next 2 sessions that we do. And then lastly, evaluate. So I also have students do like goal setting and unit reflections and then summarize everything you learned in this unit in like 3 sentences. You can have students do cite evidence and reasoning, or you can have them do the ACE method if you're a teacher or if you're a ELA teacher. Sliding skills, so you can do CFUs and social emotional learning type of deals too in your virtual notebook. So a lot of this is like really just like having a lot of resources, but you picking and choosing what you feel is right for your classroom. Students can also collaborate, which is really awesome. So students can either like complete an assignment on their own, and let's say like in your Google Meet, they work with a partner, and when they work with a partner, they can copy and paste their work into their virtual notebook. Or you can have students work on like a group slide together. So if like you have like a teacher created slide that you want them to work on, they can then copy and paste their work into their virtual notebook. So really cool with collaboration. I haven't done that yet, but I think that's something that I want to explore more. Okay, and then another really big, awesome thing about virtual notebooks is that you can leave feedback. So I usually do comments. I check their virtual notebooks like once or twice a week, depending on how much times we use them throughout the week, like we do notes and whatnot. And it's really great because it allows for immediate feedback for students, and it also keeps track of like what students haven't been on their virtual notebooks because they know that this is the bulk of our class. So I leave comments and then I kind of just like mark in my grade book, like, oh, check, they did their virtual notebook for the day. So depending on how your school uses it, or uses like classwork or homework or whatever. But either way, this is really helpful for feedback. You can also use rubrics. So if you have a preset rubric, it makes grading a lot more streamlined because you can then just like look in the virtual notebook, and then for that day, you can just click that they did it. You can put 1 out of 1, boom. And it's really helpful for tracking attendance if that is what your school does. Okay, so the fun part, setting up your virtual notebook. So there are some contents that I have gathered from my interactive notebooks that I used to use, some of the average strategies that I've learned in the past about interactive notebooks that I use still in my virtual notebooks. So I'm just going to go through like the bulk, or I'm just going to go through like how I lay out my virtual notebook. So, oh, I zoomed in way too much. So I always have a title page. And for me, I do a new virtual notebook every unit. That way students like kind of have an idea like, oh, we're moving on to the next unit. We're going to have a new virtual notebook. So it's totally up to you. And it's easier for me to front load a little bit more of the planning if I have a virtual notebook for each unit. But again, totally up to you, depending on, I know some people that do virtual notebooks, a new one every week, and that's totally cool too. I have a notebook rubric, so I do grade these. I have a rubric here. Basically, I took the one that I was using in my interactive notebooks, and then I just made it into something that would fit virtual notebooks. So I have a rubric here because I grade it at the end of each unit. I have students fill out a table of contents just so they know where certain things are, and this also kind of like helps students see like, oh, okay, like this is how much work we're doing for this unit. I have a tracker, so I used to always have students make goals. I tried to like keep that consistent this year, so they have a goal, and then they mark each topic and whether or not they finish the notes and activity. I also have them track their summative assessments, which honestly I'm not super great at, but I want students, I need to be better about getting students to be responsible for this. So this is super helpful. When we were in school, I had students track their summative assessments, and it was really helpful for them to see their growth. And it was also really helpful for students to know what their own grade is. They're like, Miss, I don't know my grade. And I'm like, check your tracker. So this is really helpful too. Virtual learning has its challenges with this one, but I'm trying to figure out a way where students can be a little bit more responsible for their own grades. And then as I showed you guys earlier, like I have some notes here. For the notes, I do Cornell note style. At the beginning, I always like make the key points for them just so they know what is expected or what it should look like. And I do front load a lot of the notes. So it's easier for me though because I've like taught, I know what content I want to use. So if you are one of those people who like change like their content pretty frequently, what I would suggest is just make 2 columns, and then key points, supporting details. Don't need all these tables and extra things in here. Just make it 2 columns, and then students can just type in like that. That's probably the easiest way to do it, and I honestly think I'm going to do that the next time. So that is another way if you think these like front loading is scary and having to input all the tables is like too much. Then I just have some click and drag, some diagrams. Some more click and drag, some diagrams, worksheet type steals. So this is like basically where students will spend most of their time like filling things out. And then lastly, I also have a end of unit reflection. So where students kind of just reflect on whether or not they achieved the learning target or if they met the goals for that unit. I kind of have them like rate themselves. And then they also answer some connection questions to reflect on the unit and ultimately just give like a 3-sentence summary about what they learned. And I let them pick and choose how to do this too. So this isn't like a super big thing. But yeah, that's what we do in each unit. And I keep the structure the same just so students don't get super confused. But for the most part, once you've figured out like a structure, like what you want inside of your notebook, and then you kind of decide like how you want to format things, it is so much easier. So what I would start with first is figuring out what slides do you want in there. Is it like, do you want a title slide? Do you want to add in the rubric? Do you want a table of contents? Like obviously like some of this is like not super necessary. But once you figure out like the bulk of like how you want your virtual notebook to look, like do you want daily journaling in there? Do you want students to do like a KWL before you do a new lesson? Do you guys want to just have the notes like how I do? So it's totally up to you, but once you figure out the structure of what you want inside your notebook, the planning becomes a lot easier. And eventually, one of the challenges that we'll talk about in a little bit is not being able to like add in a new slide after you've already assigned it. I found a workaround for that, so I'll show you guys how to do that in the next couple sessions. But to set up your virtual notebook, what I use, so a lot of things that really attract people to using the virtual notebook is that it actually looks like a paper size, right? So what I do to get this paper size is I go to File, Page Setup, and you can adjust your length and width here. Usually I do 8.5 by 11, but I did have a little bit of a bigger, I had more diagrams this unit, so I made it an inch bigger. But ultimately, you would go for 8.5 and 11, 8.5 by 11. It's the same size as like a paper. And when you print it out, if you were to actually print it out on a piece of paper, it would be that size too. So it's really awesome. So again, if you go to File, Page Setup, that will set your virtual notebook to have like this page-like structure here. The next thing that's super helpful is something called master slides. So in some of my slides, you cannot like move these boxes here. So sometimes it's frustrating because kids will move things and they're like, Miss, I don't know, I moved it, I don't know what happened, or like honestly, it's if there are things that they can move, but for the most part, you are able to like lock images in Google Slides if you want. So one way to do that is if you go to Slide and then you go to Edit Master. So this is like the master template, and you can basically create your own templates here. So that's what I did for these diagrams. So these ones you can move, right? But if we were to go back into the actual notebook, you can't move it, okay? And there's really no way that a kid can really work around these or like mess this up unless they like intentionally like look for how to use a master slide. But the way I do this is I find the blank slide. So you have your templates here. These are all the ones that come with whatever template that you're using. And I look for the blank slide. And then I just make a duplicate of it. So you duplicate the layout. And then you can, from there, you can add things to make your own, like, layout. And with your own layout, you can lock these images so it'll stay. So like right now I can move it, but eventually if I were to try to add in that slide, right, you can't move it. So this is master slides. I think it's super helpful. It's really great so kids know what they should and shouldn't be moving in certain slides. And after you make your master slide, if you just go next to the plus sign, all of your master slides should be there. So there's ones that I'm like working on still. There's ones that I've already done. And yeah, that's master slides. That's super helpful. Okay. So that just kind of goes over the brief, like a brief overview. That was not brief, actually. That just is an overview of how I use virtual notebooks, how to use a master slides template, some of the contents that are in virtual notebooks, some of the possibilities there are with them. So I hope you guys will join or will watch the second session, because my friend Emma, she's going to go over how to like add in all of the possibilities that we talked about too. So thinking maps, flowcharts, pictures, draggables, manipulatives, and how to set those up, and the sticky notes and all of that. So I hope you guys got something out of it. And if you've ever like been burning for some of the resources that I've used, let me know. I'll put my email maybe in this video. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.